Manual of Catholic Theology, based on Scheeben's Dogmatik, by Joseph Wilhelm and Thomas B. Scannell. Volume 1. The Sources of Theological Knowledge, God, Creation, and the Supernatural Order. 3rd edition revised, 1906. Read by Jacob A. Mattson. Book 1. The Sources of Theological Knowledge. Part 1. The Objective Principles of Theological Knowledge. Chapter 1. Divine Revelation. Section 1. Notion of Revelation. 3 degrees of Revelation. The word revelation originally means an unveiling, a manifestation of some object by drawing back the covering with which it is hidden. Hence we commonly use the word in the same sense of bringing to light some fact or truth hitherto not generally known, but it is especially applied to manifestations made by God, who is himself hidden from our eyes, yet makes himself known to us. It is with this divine revelation that we are here concerned. God discloses himself to us in 3 ways. The study of the universe, and especially of man, the noblest object in the universe, clearly proves to us the existence of one who is the Creator and Lord of all. This mode of manifestation is called natural revelation, because it is brought about by means of nature, and because our own nature has a claim to it, as will be hereafter explained. But God has also spoken to man by his own voice, both directly and through prophets, apostles, and sacred writers. This positive, as opposed to natural revelation, proceeds from the gratuitous condescension of God, and tends to a gratuitous union with him, both of which are far beyond the demands of our nature. Hence it is called supernatural revelation, and sometimes revelation pure and simple, because it is more properly a disclosure of something hidden. The 3rd and highest degree of revelation is in the beatific vision in heaven, where God withdraws the veil entirely, and manifests himself in all his glory. Here on earth, even in supernatural revelation, we walk by faith and not by sight. We see now through a glass in a dark manner, but then, in the beatific vision, face to face, we shall see him as he is. 2 Corinthians 5:7, 1 Corinthians 13:12, 1 John 3:2. Section 2. The nature and subject matter of natural revelation. Natural revelation is a principle of ordinary knowledge, and therefore belongs to the domain of philosophy. We touch upon it here because it is the basis of supernatural revelation, and also because at the present day all forms of revelation have been confused and have lost their proper significance. All natural knowledge of intellectual, religious, and ethical truths must be connected with a divine revelation of some kind, and this for 2 reasons: to maintain the dependence of these truths upon God, and the better to inculcate the duty of obeying them. This revelation, however, is nothing else but the action of God as Creator, giving and preserving to nature its existence, form, and life. Created things embody divine ideas, and are thus imitations of their antitypes, the divine perfections. The human intellect, in particular, is an image of the divine intellect. The Creator endows it with the power to infer, from visible nature, the existence and perfections of its author, and from its own spiritual nature, the spiritual nature of the author of all things. The revealing action of the Creator then consists in exhibiting, in matter and mind, the image of himself, and in keeping alive in man the power of knowing the image and, through the image, him who is represented. Theories which confound this natural revelation with positive revelation, like traditionalism, or with the revelation of glory, like ontologism, completely misapprehend the bearing and energy of God's creative operations and of created nature itself. The following propositions, met with in the Fathers, and even in Holy Scripture, must be understood to refer to natural revelation. When rightly explained, they serve to confirm the doctrine stated above. Quote, God is the teacher of all truth, even of natural truth, close quote, i.e. not by formal speech, nor by an inner supernatural enlightenment, but by sustaining the mind and faculties with which he is endowed in nature. See of St. Augustine, De Magistro, and St. Thomas, De Veritate, question 11. God is the light in which we know all truth, close quote. That is, not the light which we see, but the light which creates and preserves in us the faculty of knowing things as they are. Quote, God is the truth in which we read all truth. Close quote. Not as in a book or as in a mirror, but in the sense that, by means of the light received from God, we read in creatures the truths impressed upon them. The same idea is sometimes expressed by saying that God impresses His truth upon our mind and writes it in our souls. It is particularly said that God is written His law upon our hearts, Romans 2:14-15, and that He speaks to us in our conscience. This, however, does not mean a supernatural intervention. Through the light of reason, God makes known to us His will in a more vivid manner than even human language could do. Natural revelation embraces all the truths which we can apprehend by the light of our reason. Nevertheless, only those which concern God and our relations with Him are said to belong to natural revelation, because they are the only truths in which He reveals Himself to us and which He commands us to acknowledge. Thus St. Paul, Romans 1:18-20 and 2:14-15, points out as naturally revealed, quote, the invisible things of God, especially, quote, His eternal power and divinity, close quote, and also the moral law. It must not, however, be thought that all that can be or ought to be known about God, His designs, and His works is within the sphere of natural revelation. The unaided light of reason can attain only immediate knowledge of God by means of the study of His creatures, and must consequently be imperfect. Both the subjective medium, the human mind, and the objective medium, creation, are finite, whereas God is infinite. Moreover, the human intellect, by reason of its dependence on the senses, is so imperfect that it knows essences of things only from their phenomena, and therefore only obscurely and imperfectly. And lastly, the study of nature can result only in the knowledge of such truths as are necessarily connected with it, and can tell us nothing about any free acts which God may have performed above and beyond nature, the knowledge of which He may nevertheless require of us. Thus, even if the knowledge of God through the medium of nature without any special help were sufficient for our natural vocation, there would still be room for another and a supernatural revelation. But a natural revelation is, in a certain sense, insufficient even for our natural vocation, as we shall now proceed to prove. Section 3. The object and necessity of positive revelation, its supernatural character. The direct object or purpose of positive revelation is to impart to us a knowledge of the truths which it contains, or to develop and perfect such knowledge of them as we already possess. The remote, but at the same time the chief, object is to enable us to attain our last end. The measure of the knowledge required depends upon the end ordained to man by his Creator. Its necessity is determined by the capability or incapability of man to acquire this knowledge. Thus, the necessity of a positive revelation varies according to the end to be attained and man's capacity to attain it. Man, as we shall see, is destined to a supernatural end, and consequently, the principal object of a positive revelation is to enable him to reach it. But this supernatural vocation does not relieve him from his natural duties, and even for the fulfillment of these, a positive revelation is in a certain sense necessary. The Catholic doctrine on this point has been defined by the Vatican Council. Quote, to this divine revelation it belongeth that those divine things which are not impervious to human reason may, in the present state of the human race, be known by all with expedition and firm certainty, and without any mixture of error. Nevertheless, not on this account but must revelation be deemed absolutely necessary, but because God of His infinite goodness hath ordained to man to a supernatural end, that is to say, to be a sharer in the good things of God, which altogether surpass the understanding of the human mind. For eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, nor hath it entered into the heart of man, what things God hath prepared for them that love Him. Section 3, Chapter 2. We must therefore distinguish two different kinds of necessity. Positive revelation is not absolutely, categorically, and physically necessary for the knowledge of truths of the natural order bearing upon religion and morals, but it is relatively, hypothetically, and morally necessary. If positive revelation were absolutely necessary for the acquisition of natural, moral, and religious truths, then none of these truths could be known by any man in any other way, but this is plainly opposed to the doctrine that God and the moral law may be known by man's unaided reason. Many difficulties, however, impede the acquisition of this knowledge. Very few men have the talent and opportunity to study such a subject, and even under the most favorable circumstances there will be doubt and error owing to man's moral degradation and the influences to which he is exposed. Positive revelation is needed to remedy these defects, but the necessity is only relative, because it exists merely in relation to a portion of mankind, a part of the moral law, and in different degrees under different circumstances. The necessity is moral, because there is no physical impossibility, but only great difficulty, and hypothetical, because it exists only in the hypothesis that God has provided no other means of surmounting the difficulties. On the other hand, positive revelation is absolutely, categorically, and physically necessary for the attainment of our supernatural ends. To reach this end, we must tend towards it supernaturally while we are here on earth, in statu viae, and this supposes the knowledge of the end and of the means thereto. As both are supernatural, both must be made known by means of a direct communication from the author of the supernatural order. And the necessity is absolute, because it extends to every truth of this order, and arises from the very nature of man. Physical, because of man's physical incapacity of knowing God as he is in himself, and categorical, because God cannot substitute any other means for it. Positive revelation is always a supernatural act as far as its form is concerned, because in making it God is acting beyond and above his ordinary activity as creator, conservator, and prime mover of nature, and out of purely gratuitous benevolence. This supernatural character belongs to it even when it merely supplements natural revelation, but it is purely and simply supernatural in all respects only when it manifests supernatural truths and is a means to supernatural ends. Section 4. The subject matter of a supernatural revelation, mysteries. We learn from the preceding section that supernatural revelation gives us knowledge of truths unrevealed by natural revelation. These truths constitute the specific and proper contents of supernatural revelation. As, however, this revelation is by word of mouth, and not, as in the revelation of glory, by the vision of its object, as it does not entirely lift the veil from revealed things, it leaves them in obscurity, entirely withholding their reality from the mind's eye, and only reproducing their essence in analogical concepts taken from the sphere of our natural knowledge. This peculiar character of the contents of supernatural revelation is called mystery, or mystery of God, that is, a truth hidden in God, but made known to man by free communication. Mystery in common parlance means something hidden or veiled, especially by one mind from another. It implies the notion that some advantage attaches to the knowledge of it which gives the initiated a position superior to outsiders. The heathens gave the name of mysteries to the symbolical or sacred words and acts which they kept secret from the multitude, or to the hidden meaning of their liturgy, understood only by the initiated. The fathers applied the term to the sacred words and acts of the true religion, kept secret from the heathen and catechumens, and understood only by the perfect, especially the mysteries ennobled only by faith, which are veiled under the sacramental appearances. Saith Cardinal Newman, Development of Christian Doctrine, page 27. The notion of theological mystery, properly so called, implies that the mysterious truth is incapable of being discovered by human reason, and that, even after it is revealed, reason cannot prove its existence. These conditions, however, are fulfilled by many truths which are not usually styled mysteries. Hence we must add the further condition that the truth should be naturally unknowable on account of its absolute and objective superiority to a sphere of knowledge, and that we should consequently be unable to obtain a direct and proper, but only an analogical representation of its contents.